I'm Michaela Scurlock, and you're watching A Pro-Wife Story. Today I get to spend time with Christa Muhammad. Christa is the wife of former Carolina Panther Muhsin Muhammad. Watch Christa's story and see how love truly enables you to make a difference right where you are.
You know, my initial reaction is, oh my gosh. My reason for coming forward with it is to let anyone else know life goes on, and I can't stop being a wife, I can't stop being a mom, I can't stop living. So I'm like, bring it on. I remember always thinking, there's no way I would ever give my child up for adoption, and you truly don't know the situation until you see it firsthand. It definitely gives you an appreciation for your country. God bless it.
Michaela Scurlock presents A Pro-Wife Story, featuring Christa Muhammad.
All right, Christa, I want to start out by talking a little bit about your parents. Your parents met in Bible college, right?
Correct. They met in Bible college, 1973, 74-ish.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that, because that's a very unique story, and I want to emphasize on that.
Well, as many people know, I come from a diverse background, let's say. My mother is black, my father is white. So back then in the 70s, that was pretty much a no-no. And so they fought through it, and I'm proud and happy to say that 2017, they're still married, happily married at that.
And when you said they fought through it, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, as you can imagine, back then, I mean, that was a no-no. You did not date interracially. A white man with a black woman, you know, people are going to turn their nose up at for different reasons. But they, like I said, fought through it, and I'm so proud to say that.
Did they have to overcome some specific things, or was it just more like a matter of being discriminated against?
From what I hear, they were no longer wanted in the school. So, I mean, it hurts to say it now, and I kind of get teared up because without that union, there would be no Christa, Nikki, and Corey, myself and my siblings, you know. So I'm extremely proud of them, and they are just like normal couples. And you know, my mother's side loves my father's side of the family, my father's side loves my mother's side of the family, and I think it was just kind of getting through a few obstacles in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's so sad that we even have to talk about that, and that is even a topic. Back then, or even now in some communities, unfortunately, people still have those beliefs. But I want to emphasize, because you hit it on the head when you said that there wouldn't be a Christa. So we wouldn't have your story to listen to, and you wouldn't be able to share it if it wasn't for your parents. And people like your parents exist throughout the country, throughout the world.
Correct.
And the emphasis is that love sees no color, right?
Love sees no color. I mean, I have friends from every background, every walk of life, rich, poor, famous actresses, athletes, to people who are janitors. You know, I treat them the same, and teach my kids to do the same as I was taught.
Yeah, your parents definitely showed us that, you know, love gives us the strengths to deal with anything. And because of them, you were here.
Thank God.
So, thank God for that. Now, on that topic, in regards to love, how did you and Moose meet? And they call him Moose, right? Not Muhsin, right?
Correct.
Yes. I want to make sure that everybody knows this.
Until we get mad. Then we call him, you know, we go a little deeper. But yes, everyone knows Muhsin Muhammad.
You call him Muhsin?
As Moose. But 9 times out of 10, I call him Moose. Or, you know, we have different little nicknames for him. But tonight, we'll go by Moose.
So we go by Moose. Good. Okay, so you guys met in high school, I think,
Met in
right?
high school. Yeah. I was a freshman in high school. He was a junior.
Okay, hold on a second.
Oh, yeah.
Because 2 years don't make a big difference when you're older. But when you're at that age.
When you're at that age, your mom wants to choke them.
Yeah.
And another obstacle we were able to get through. But again, we met in high school. I was like a freshman. Yeah. He was a junior. But I had known his father, he was my track coach in middle school.
Wow.
So, and I went to school with his brother, you know, his younger brother and things like that. So, kind of had known of each other. But then I think he saw me in 9th grade and was like, I got to get her.
And as a parent myself of 4, you know, I would have wanted to choke him too if I would have heard that.
Right,
You know?
and looking back, now that I'm a parent,
Yeah,
woo, that's a tough one.
yeah.
That's a tough one. We weren't bad kids, just young, trying to find ourselves, and here we are 20 plus years later.
So you guys sort of grew up a little bit together, it seems like.
Yeah, it was, there's some funny things, like we actually lived in the same house in a duplex at different times. So I don't know if they have those here in Carolina, but in Michigan, you know, there were duplexes where one family lives on one side of the house, other family lives on the other side. They lived on one side and were just moving out as we were moving in.
It's almost like a movie setting, you know.
It's-
First, your dad is the track coach many years ago in middle school. Then you meet, then you kind of cross path in, you know, in the duplex, and then you fall in love.
Yeah, so we have stories to tell the kids about that good old house we both lived in, and you know, share stories. And I'm like, you can't talk about my side because you don't know what was going on over on my side. Just like I can't talk about your side. That was your side of the house. And that's how we do now when we get mad at each other. He gets his side of the house, I get my side of the house.
Just no wall
Just like
in between.
yeah, exactly.
Right, right. So then he goes off to college, but you still in high school. And how was that transition? I would imagine that would be.
It was interesting, you know. I went from watching him play high school football to college football and eventually in the NFL. But it was interesting, you know. I was young, he was young. It's kind of like, are we sure about this? And it all worked out.
The rest is history, right?
The rest is history. You know, not to say there wasn't some breakups in between, some broken hearts. Not just my heart, his too now.
Yeah.
His heart got, but in the end, as he was ending his college career,
Right.
that's when.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but we have to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Christa Muhammad.
More of a pro-wife story right after this. A pro-wife story continues with Michaela and Christa Muhammad.
So before the break, we talked about Moose going off to college, you finishing high school, and then at some point you knew that he was the one, and he knew that you were the one, and you guys decided to get married, right?
Yeah. Towards the end of college, we discussed it a little bit, but we were so young still. And looking back, I think about how old I was. I have kids that age now.
Because how old were you at that point?
At that point, 19.
19, yeah.
Got married at 20. But at 19, discussing marriage.
Oh, I know. I got married very young too. So
Yeah, so it's like we discussed it, but honestly, I don't even think I was that serious about it when I was discussing it. I was probably like sitting playing a video game while he's talking on the phone about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. But then later on down the line, he proposed.
Yeah.
So in '96, we went through the draft, got married, moved.
So when you said the draft, he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers.
Drafted
right?
by the Carolina Panthers. So got married, got engaged, got married, moved, started a new career, and had our first child all within a year.
That's lots of changes.
Oh, lots of changes.
And did you had one child at that point, and then did you decide to have more right away, or?
Yeah, we had our oldest, Jordan, and then 1 year later, to the date, same birthday, we had Chase, our second one. So
And I know you couldn't plan this.
Couldn't plan it.
That's just,
couldn't plan it. So
wow.
they are 19 and 20 now and have celebrated their birthday every year together.
And never had an issue, never wanted their own day.
No, never wanted their own day. You know, we did the whole Chuck E. Cheese thing when they were little. We'd throw the big parties, and now it's kind of like, Mom, Dad, you know, we'll go to dinner or whatever, but we kind of want a birthday party on our own now. So it's not them not wanting to birthday together. It's celebrating with the parents only a little bit, and then we'll all.
What about that transition into not just being married from not being married, but then also being in the NFL, and that's a stressful job that he has, and you being the wife, there are certain responsibilities that come with that. How was that transition for you?
Honestly, it wasn't too bad. Now, I had my hands full with 2 children, very full. A newborn and a 12-month-old who, you know, was 2 months into walking. So she's all over the place, and, you know, I'm trying to tend to the newborn. But I had a big-time support group. My parents had moved down here from Michigan. My mother-in-law would come down. My sister-in-law was here, my sister. So I had a very big support group. I can't nag and complain like I didn't have that, and I'm totally grateful for it.
And then then you had you ended up having 4 kids, right?
4 biological.
4 biological kids. And then at what point, because I know this about you, did you feel like your family wasn't complete?
I was actually 5 years old when I knew in my mind. I was at my grandmother's house, my father's mother, as a kid, and I saw something on TV, and it just tugged at my heart. And for the longest time, my grandmother didn't even realize this. It tugged at my heart, and I said, man, if I ever could adopt one day. Of course, I didn't know, you know, it would cost or the means or whatever. You had to have resources to do it. But I knew that I wanted to help a child. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be through adoption, but at an early age, that's when it started. And it never went away. Even after I, you know, gave birth, and I have 4 children. You know, I have 3 girls and a boy, so it's, you know, you got both sexes. So people are like, what do you want more kids for? Are you crazy? You're already...
Yeah, and I have to ask you that question because being a mother myself, I remember when I had my first, and then I was pregnant with my second. And you have those thoughts, how am I possibly going to love the second as much as I love the first? Right? You have these emotions going through your mind. But in your case now, did you ever think, how am I going to love an adopted child the same way I'm loving my biological child?
Right. As with my first child, Jordan, I remember thinking that, like, oh, because I was a nut over that child, like, you know, like most first-time mothers are. How am I going to love my second one as much as I love her? And then Chase came, and, you know, you love them the same. And then little Moose came, love him just as much as first, and then Kennedy. So in my mind, it wasn't me. There was no doubt in my mind that I couldn't love them. I know that, you know, it takes time to bond, and you're not going to just have that as soon as they, you know, your first hug with them. It takes time to bond. I was just needing to make sure that it was something that both myself and my husband wanted to do. I can't be 150% into it and him only 99% say. You know, you have to be both on the same page, 100%, let's do this as a team. And
was he on board?
Initially, no. No, he said, Chris, it's not that I don't want to do it, but I have what you said, that fear of being able to love adopted children the way I love my biological children. And he went through a process where he kept thinking about it, and I kept saying, you know, pump your brakes. If you have to, don't rush, you know, the decision. And if you're, like I said, not on board 100%, then we'll find another way to help a child or, you know, to give back. Until you're 100%, you know, we'll just hold off. And then he kept having all these situations where there was another NFL football player who was adopted, and he heard his story. And that's when, amongst other things that he kept hearing and kept, you know how things kind of just come at you and
Just kind of started to work out, huh? Yeah.
Start working on you. And he heard someone else's story, and he came home one day and said, Chris, let's do it. And when he said that, I got on that phone, you know, so.
Well, we have to take another little break, but when we come back, I want to talk a lot about that because that's a special moment.
Thank you.
More with Michaela and Christa Muhammad when a pro-wife story returns. A pro-wife story continues with Michaela and Christa Muhammad.
I think that's so emotional when you said that, number one, you waited because you trusted that he would be touched in the same way that you had already been touched to want to adopt a child, number one.
Right.
And then number two, you know, when he, through other people's stories, which is why we're doing this in the first place, to share your story,
Correct.
to touch someone else who may be on the fence, right?
Right.
And I just find that so intriguing because you were patient, number one, and you trusted. And then he was also patient, I think, in listening to you and what you wanted to do and prayed about it. And now you made a decision to adopt 2 children. Now, as someone who has never adopted a child, I'm very curious, how do you make a decision as to where the children coming from, who they are? How do you make that decision?
First off, I've always had a love for Africa in general, and my children are from Ethiopia, but we didn't just go by that. We thought about doing it domestically. We thought about, I'll take anyone's child. Mm-hmm. And so we thought about—
I believe that. Knowing you, I believe that.
So we did research, and Ethiopia, it just hit us hard, like the country, the people, just the whole, the background, it just hit us hard, and we decided to go with them.
Yeah. So then when the time came to go pick them up, 2, right?
Yes.
Did everybody go, or?
I went along with one of my girlfriends. Moose, originally the plan was for him to go, and as you know, you're a football player's wife. You're not leaving to go anywhere if we have a Monday night football game. And at the time he was playing with the Bears, and no, he can't go. So it's either we delay going to get the children, or he goes with me and
listen,
comes home with no
this
job.
This comes up every time I talk to a wife. Mm-hmm. The game does not stop if the player and his family have a life-changing event.
Right.
The game goes on, right?
The game goes on.
Yeah.
And they were very supportive. The Bears, the organization, Lovey Smith, they're very supportive. But even still, Moose, you're not going to Ethiopia. So right. I'm sitting there thinking,
we support what you do, but you're staying here.
Yeah, exactly. So one of my girlfriends went with me,
yeah.
and we flew on over, 18-hour flight, flew over and got to meet Journey and Madden for the first time. When we brought them home, we flew back into Chicago.
Let me back up a little bit, because you said you picked them up. And how old were they?
They were 4 and 8.
4 and 8. Mm-hmm. Now, I would think at that age, you've already developed some kind of relationship with your birth mother and your birth father.
Right, as far as the children.
Right, your children. How did that affect them? Number one, that they were coming with you. Number two, that they had to say goodbye, or did they have no contact with their birth mother?
Their birth father had passed away, and that was one of the reasons the mother had to relinquish them. I mean, as you know, Ethiopia is a third world country. I mean, they're poor. And so I remember always thinking, you know, when I was younger, there's no way I would ever give my child up for adoption. I would live on the side of the road in a box if I had, you know, things like that. And you truly don't know the circumstances of the situation until you're there and see it firsthand. And my 2 children were malnourished. They're partially malnourished. I mean, they were checked, and it was written out by a doctor that they had partial malnourishment. And so to see your child, you know, just, they're hungry, they can't eat, you want them to have a good education, opportunity, I totally can understand why a mother would give their child up for adoption in those situations. The bond, I mean, they, to this day, love their birth mother dearly and their father who's deceased. But
Did you watch them say goodbye?
I watched them say goodbye, and I was a complete mess because part of me felt like I was taking them from her. And I didn't want to. I mean, if it was up to me, I would have taken all of them, all the kids, all the parents. You guys just all come on. But it definitely gives you an appreciation for your country, the United States of America. God bless it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so emotional, I think, and especially, I guess, because we're moms and we know that bond between a child. But then also, I feel like this woman who we don't know, you know, did something very unselfishly.
Very unselfish.
And again, because of love.
There's nothing in me that will say she did it for any other reason than love. She loves those children with everything in her, no differently than I love my biological children or you love yours. I mean, you have to do it. It's like, you know, sink or swim, basically.
Did they speak any English?
You know, they knew a few phrases, a few things to get them by. They were in an orphanage for a couple years before we got them, so they, you know, learned a little bit there, but when we got them here, we were all freestyling because they speak a language called Amharic.
Freestyling, definition?
Freestyling.
Like hands and feet?
Yeah, I mean, sign language.
Yeah.
The language there is Amharic, and of course we speak English.
Yeah.
They know very little English, and I know no Amharic. Moose didn't either.
I never even knew that is a language.
So I'm thinking with me getting 2 children, that they'd be able to kind of help each other out. It was actually kind of comical, and today we laugh about it. But and I thought that they would be able to kind of keep their native tongue, but they heard a couple Justin Bieber songs and.
Well, hey, that does it, right?
Yeah. What's her name? Miley Cyrus and all those little boy bands, and that's how they learned English. That and some good schooling. No, right. But my son, honestly, his first full phrase was apple-bottom jeans, boots with the fur. That was his first complete sentence, and when he got that down, we were like, yes, Dad.
Build on that.
I say it shamefully, but build on that, baby.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, now time for a little break, but much more with Christa Muhammad after this break.
More with Michaela and Christa Muhammad when A Pro-Wife Story returns. A Pro-Wife Story continues with Michaela and Christa Muhammad.
So your family grew all of a sudden from having 4 children to having 6 children, and
Correct.
I'm curious, we haven't really talked about, we talked about you and Moose, but we haven't really talked about how it affected your 4 children, bringing in 2 more.
They absolutely loved it. And that's not to say that along the way, you're kind of like, scoot over, you're too close to me, or, you know, wait, this is mine.
Which is normal.
That's normal.
Right.
But my kids, all 6 of them, would literally kill for each other. And it was, with my 4 biological, it was just as moving for them as it was for Moose and I, even at a young age. I mean, they saw it, 'cause we took them to Ethiopia first on a family trip, just so they could kind of see where their new brother and sister would be coming from. We had no idea who Journey and Madden were at the time, but just to let them see, you know, where their brother and sister would be coming from. So that was eye-opening for them, and then for them to get them here to the U.S.
Well, I would think it'd be eye-opening for anyone.
Anyone.
Because, I mean, I'm assuming that just the quality of life is so different, like you said earlier. I mean, access to, you know, have access to food, transportation,
school,
or whatever, is housing.
I mean, something as basic as running water. You know, when we went back, you know, some of the families still doesn't have running water, and we're just so used to it, or using the restroom, and can I wash my hands now, or I'm thirsty, can I get a drink? You know, we were able to let our children, even Journey and Mad, now that they're older, you know, because they've got accustomed to some things here in the U.S. But going back, we took them back a little over a year ago to see their.
And I want to talk about you going back, and definitely I want to touch on that. But before we get to that, I want to touch a little bit about Moose had been with the Carolina Panthers for 9 years, right?
9 years,
and then
correct.
he went to the Chicago Bears for 2, and that's when you brought your 2 new children home, and then you moved back to the Carolinas, right?
Right, so 9 with the Panthers,
Yeah.
drafted here, spent 9 years here, 3 with the Bears,
Yeah.
and then came back and did 2 with the Panthers,
Yeah.
2 more years.
And your children were still, your new children were still learning English at that time, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So did you move back into the same home that you lived in before?
Well, when we flew back from Ethiopia, we stayed in Chicago for 2 weeks, came back to Carolina. We wanted to put them in a school. They were in private school, my biological children. They were in private school. We allowed Journey and Madden to go there a little bit. It was phenomenal, wonderful foundation. I love the school to this day. But we wanted to pull them out so they could get in the ESL, English as a Second Language program, which the public schools offered. So what we did was moved into a community where initially we thought we were going to use just the address. But then we realized...
Didn't get away with that.
Yeah, we realized that you have to, just because you pay taxes there doesn't mean
Right.
anything. You have to live in that home. So honest to goodness, from day one, when my kids started school, we've slept in this house every night
Yeah.
since.
Thank you for saying that. This
Yeah.
is the proof now.
Let me clear
Yeah,
that up.
everyone
We have-
listening
yeah.
from the school board.
And it surprised a lot of
Yeah.
people because
So did you sell your other home, or?
we kept it for a while.
Yeah.
And then we had a few homes, and then
Yeah.
a few homes in Charlotte, one in Chicago. We got a big family, but we don't need 4 houses.
Right.
We started getting rid of some of the homes and selling them and doing this and doing that. We had big plans to build, but our kids were so happy where we were, the neighborhood we were in. Again, we didn't plan on living in this home. We were going to rent it out. And
So you sold, I know for a fact, because I want to touch on this, you sold one of the homes here locally. It took a little bit longer, right? So your real estate broker had a unique idea how to sell
yeah.
it, right?
In '08, I think it was,
Yeah.
the housing market was down. So she, along with someone else, I can't remember, no names, mentioned that you should put your home on eBay. eBay, you know,
Yeah.
a house on eBay, that's something I had never heard of. But from a marketing standpoint, you know, you just
You go with the
listen
flow.
and whatever works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, whatever. We did that, and all of a sudden the media had the Mohammeds is going bankrupt.
So when that happens, it's that perception that unfortunately, you know, sometimes takes place. What goes through your mind?
My mind, I was a little bothered.
Yeah.
Because it was a,
It's probably mildly spoken, right?
yeah, Moose is just like, oh, you know, I was used to media and, you know, things happen and whatever. But Moose is like, well, whatever. Mama Bear, I had a problem with it because I know how hard my husband works. I know how we're so easy living. You know, we don't blow money. And I know what's in my
Well, it's
bank-
hurtful,
in
I
my
think,
bank account.
right? But it's hurtful. I think it's hurtful
Yeah,
when
'cause it
people
was-
start talking about you not knowing the truth.
Not
But
knowing the
unfortunately, that
truth.
happens. Yeah.
I think one writer got a hold of it, and then, you know, they pull off that, and then it was like a mushroom effect. And it was, the Mohammeds put their house on eBay, they're going broke. Needless to say, we did not sell the house on eBay.
Right.
We had the house a few more years.
But we know for a fact
and
you
we
didn't
never
go
filed,
broke.
We didn't go broke. We
Didn't file
file
bankruptcy. We're going to set the record
We're gonna
straight.
set the record straight.
And you're still here.
We're still here, and
Yeah.
you know, our financial advisor's like, you know, I know what you got. You guys don't worry about it. But it was something that was kind of bothersome. That was probably one of the most, as far as rumor-wise, that, you know, I'd be a lie to say that didn't tug at me a little bit.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. We have to take another break. But
problem.
thank you for sharing it, because we want to make sure that people listening to this show understand how hurtful it can be. And the lesson to be learned is that be slow to speak and quick to listen.
Correct. Don't believe the hype.
More with Michaela and Christa Muhammad when A Pro-Wife Story returns. A Pro-Wife Story continues with Michaela and Christa Muhammad.
Let's talk about Christa. You are so full of love, so determined. It doesn't seem to me like you have any weaknesses, do you?
Yeah, I do. My children are a weakness. Like, you know, you want to give them everything, say yes to everything, and but you want to make sure you're raising them properly. That's a weakness. Of course, my husband's a weakness.
How is your husband a weakness?
He knows how to make me laugh almost in any situation, and so I consider that making me weak. Some things I can't even do because there's something that makes me laugh even when I don't want to laugh, like being at the drive-thru at a restaurant, you know, going through the drive-thru and he's saying stuff and I'm trying to order and he's mumbling something under his breath, trying to be funny. Little things like that. He knows what I'm talking about.
And laughing is good. You know,
Laughing is
helps.
great at the appropriate time.
Yeah. I also know one thing about you, because you shared this with me. You have a secret addiction to OnStar.
OnStar.
Yes.
I am an OnStar addict. I could be the OnStar spokesperson. I can do an OnStar commercial. And we were discussing how, that's another thing, he'll make me laugh when I'm pushing the little OnStar button, and because I'm directionally challenged and I'm not ashamed to admit it, I'll hit my little OnStar button. They're talking to me through my speaker, giving me directions, and my husband is on the side of me giggling and chuckling and making me laugh.
But they don't know you by first name, do they?
They know me by first name.
Christa.
A lot of them do because they're
They
headquarters.
really know you by first name.
I was in Hawaii, as I mentioned to you, and we were in a rental car. And of course, it had OnStar, but it wasn't hooked up, so they allowed me to use my account. Honest to goodness, the gentleman said, "Is this Miss Muhammad with the orange Hummer from Charlotte?" And I proudly but shamefully said, "Yes, it is. Now get me where I'm going."
Yeah, you probably are an OnStar spokesperson, because that's interesting. You know, I guess I don't know enough about OnStar to know how that even works, but I'm impressed.
My
very
kids
impressed.
will tell you, my kids' friends, they all
Yeah.
know Miss Muhammad and her OnStar.
On a more serious note, there's something that you're also dealing with in a very remarkable way that you haven't really shared publicly.
No, I've shared it with family and a few close friends, but maybe about 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, better known as MS, and it was shocking not only to me but my family, but it's something I've been able to learn a little more about and kind of overcome in a way, you know.
How do you deal with that when you get those kind of news?
It was shocking. I had an episode where one of my eyes was a little blurry, and I honestly, I was at my kids' basketball practice. I was thinking it was maybe the fluorescent lighting in the gym, and I remember asking one of the basketball coaches, I'm like, "Is it blurry in here?" And they said, "No." So the following day, I was at something at my kids' school, and I noticed my eye getting worse, and it was on a Friday, and I'm like, oh, I better call, because I don't have eye situations, you know. I knew I was getting a little older, maybe needed reading glasses, but it was just one eye, and I said, you know what, the weekend's coming up, I better call the doctor real quick. Called the eye doctor, they got me in, did what they had to do, and they said that I had inflammation behind my eye and my optic nerve. I said, okay. And he said, that's one of the first signs of MS. And I'm looking at him like, what is MS? I mean, I've heard of it, you know, but you don't know about something until
You don't research it.
You don't, yeah.
And that's sad sometimes because we don't pay so much attention to what maybe people around us are dealing with until it actually affects us, right?
Correct, correct. So he sent me to get an MRI, and they said, Ms. Muhammad, if we see something, then we'll call you tomorrow. If not, you'll hear from us in about a week. You'll hear from your doctor in a week. Well, the next day my phone rings, and they told me I had it. And, you know, my initial reaction is, oh my gosh. But my reason for coming forward with it is to let anyone else know who may be diagnosed with it. It's not a death sentence. Yeah. I'm still all over the place, traveling, raising my children, you know, and you just see a doctor and get it under control.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because I know there are people out there who are probably at some point going to be confronted with MS. And you were definitely sharing with us that life goes on, and
yeah, it's
can still do
scary.
Yeah.
But as you said, life goes on. I mean, you have to. I can't stop being a wife. I can't stop being a mom. I can't stop living. So I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah. Put on your boxing gloves.
Put on your boxing gloves.
More of a pro-wife story right after this. A pro-wife story continues with Michaela and Christa Muhammad.
Before the break, we talked about how powerfully you living with MS and doing all the things that you used to do, having adopted children. I mean, there's so many things that I can say about you. I mean, I was just talking about this in the break with you, that we can make a probably series about you, not just a 1-hour show. It's so hard to lump everything together.
Because I talk too much.
No, it's just because you have so much to offer and so much to share with people that I think can influence people in such a positive way. So it's very hard to, as we're coming to an end, to pick something. But I do want to talk about, you made a decision to take your adopted children back, I think just last year or the year before, right?
Yeah.
To Ethiopia to reunite them with their birth mother. Share with us a little bit how that was like.
Well, we surprised them with a little scavenger hunt for Journey's birthday, and when they finally got to the end of the treasure, they opened envelopes that said, we're going to Ethiopia, and with their plane tickets. We took them back, and it was extremely emotional. So there was myself and Moose and 7 children. We also took Journey's best friend, my father-in-law. We got there again, like I said, the initial meeting with them, they were waiting for us at the airport. I mean, it was so moving. It may be truly one of the best moments of my life, because I saw not just Journey and Man, all of us, you know, that love and, you know.
How many years had gone by since they had seen?
About 8.
About 8, wow.
About 8. And just for them to be able to go back and see, you know, what we have in America versus what we had here. One thing that remains the same the whole time was love, straight through. Yeah. You know, financially, you may be better off. You may have more opportunity here as far as school and medical care, but the one thing that has remained the same from birth until now is the love, because they love those children just as we do. It was a wonderful experience. We got to tour Ethiopia, so we were in one city, hopping on planes, you know, and we took the birth mother with us to go see different cities, different landmarks there. You know, they have churches and things like that.
And I would think it was such a relief also to the birth mom to see her kids doing so well.
Oh my goodness, such a relief.
Yeah.
I mean, she expressed it to me over and over again, expressed her gratitude and how grateful she was, and that meant so much. You know, we look at it now like, oh, you know, it was so neat they got to go back. But we had some struggles along the way. I don't think I told you this. We lost our luggage. Now, we didn't lose it. The airlines lost our luggage for the first 3 days. And there's no Walmart.
But you had love.
There's
you
no
had love.
We had love with the same clothes on for 3 days.
Yeah.
There's no Walmart. There's no Target. There's no CVS. We had toothbrushes that we were able to get from the hotel, so we did have fresh breath,
Yeah.
but the rest of us, the clothing stuff, so we got a true taste of what it was like to live,
Wow.
you know, we had the clothes on our back, that was it.
And I know, Muhsin, you want to bring awareness to adoption. What is it that someone should do if they feel it on their heart to maybe adopt a child? What would be the first step they should take?
Research, to know that, you know, we did international, but there are just as many children here in America who are in foster care, who can be adopted through foster care or adopted through an adoption agency. And there are children internationally. A child's a child to me. It doesn't matter your citizenship. And then to go into it wholeheartedly, not thinking, oh, maybe I should, or maybe if you're still thinking maybe, wait a while and figure it out. Because it's not like going to get a new kitten or a new dog or a new car. I mean, you got to go into it, not even 100%, 150%. That's not to say that you have all the answers when you get the child, but just know that it's a serious commitment.
Yeah. Sounds to me like the number one component that you have is, and we keep on coming back on this, is love. I mean, you're sitting here because of your parents had love for each other and overcame what they had to overcome, the struggles and the world that was against them, right? And so because of love, you were here.
Yeah.
And now because of love, your children are here.
Correct.
And not just the two adopted one, but even the 4 biological one. And I know you so full of love. And like I said, this is the least favorite part of mine in any show that I do, which is the end. Because we have to wrap up, and I know there's so much more that we could talk about. But I need to mention that, because this is something that people don't know, you love truly everyone. I was just over here a couple of weeks ago, and I remember you stopping our conversation and saying, wait, I hear the school bus, and I need to make sure that the child that's being watched by his grandma gets off the bus okay.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
you just go out of your way. And people obviously watching this show don't know you on the same level I may know you. But I need to mention this because the importance, I think, about you is that the biggest gift that you can give to us is love. And it's that love that has allowed you, I believe, to touch all of us. So I just want to tell you, thank you so much.
Thank you, that was
For
kind.
everything you do. And if you ever run into Christa Muhammad anywhere, even if she's lost, please tell her thank you for just loving on all of us.
You've been watching A Pro-Life Story, presented by Michaela Scurlock and the Carolina Panthers.